The next speaker is someone that also kind of gives an introduction. He was a longtime director of the American Humanist Association and now is a president of the National Coalition of Reason. Please welcome Fred Edwards.
Okay. All right, so I've been in this movement as my day job since 1980, okay? So I get paid to do this stuff, but it's more than that. I want other people to be able to get paid to do this stuff. I think we need to grow as a movement so that there are more career opportunities in atheism, humanism, free thought, and so on. And so that's why I do trainings to professionalize our movement. That's why I try to work so hard to organize local groups in our larger community of reason. That's why I'm such an activist and have been so for so long. And the movement is growing. As Annie Laurie just pointed out to you in her talk, she's got a paid staff of quite a number of people. And there's paid staffs with the American Humanist Association and American Atheists and the Secular Student Alliance and many of these other groups. There are career opportunities in our movement now. And so I'm going to show you some dramatic things that are happening in our movement to change everything. Now let's go back one slide if we can. Oh, I see, I've got this little thing. I can do it myself. All right, so we'll go back to the blank slide for the moment. Because I want to tell you that we, in the non-theistic community, are in a real sweet spot right now. We're controversial enough to be interesting, but not so controversial as to go unheard. We're not beyond the pale anymore. Not like back in the 50s and 60s when if you said that you were godless, the next word was communist. So things are different. Now, ideas that are considered new tend to go through three phases. First, they're considered so controversial or odd that people won't talk about them. Then they're considered fascinating, and people do nothing but talk about them. Finally, they become mainstream, and they're no longer controversial enough to spark conversation or secure airtime. So we saw examples on Phil Donahue and Oprah Winfrey and so on, that just being one of us can get you airtime. Well, think about some other things that have gone through these stages. Interracial marriage. There was once a time you didn't talk about that. Then it was the subject of the TV talk shows. And now you can't get airtime for it. All right? Transgender rights, gay rights. So you see, these things go through these phases. And we're going through this stage now, we in the non-theistic community. Now the idea that one can be a good citizen without believing in a God will still get you airtime if you handle it right. So given this reality, now is the ideal time for folks like us to use every opportunity to make our voices heard. We need to strike while this iron is hot, and we need to bravely use creative and striking approaches to marketing ourselves. Now I'm going to show you some examples of that. A little recent history will provide an example of one way this has been done. And I'm referring to the history of provocative billboards and bus ad campaigns that have been used by our movement in recent years. For lo, it came to pass that all of a sudden, out of nowhere, and for no godly reason, signs of free thought started springing up all over America. What is recognized as the first free thought billboard in this cycle of public relations campaigning was put up October 2nd, 2007 by the Freedom from Religion Foundation. Now this whimsical, full-color, 18-foot billboard mimicked a stained glass window, and as you can see it says, "Beware of dogma." Well, this was not only an effective billboard, it was an award-winning billboard because in 2008, it won the Addy Silver Award from the American Advertising Federation. Well, more such billboards in other cities generated a counter billboard featuring a black child saying the Pledge of Allegiance that asked, "Why do atheists hate America?" But the Freedom from Religion Foundation soldiered on, receiving contributions and erecting an outstanding number of billboards in cities all across America. Well, soon others got into the act. A Philadelphia businessman funded this billboard that you see here. And the idea of a blue sky and fluffy white clouds. I had one woman call me up and complain about this and said, "Why do you use the sky? That's God." So my slogan now is, "Take back the sky." Now you can see that it's kind of a benign slogan. P.G. Myers criticized me. He said, "That isn't controversial." And I said, "Watch the reaction." And he later came back to me and said, "Yeah, Fred, you're right. It is controversial. Don't believe in God? You are not alone." We're just letting folks know that this is where to find us, because what is our whole point in promoting ourselves? It's to say to folks who already agree with us, "Hey, we're over here." That's all that this does. And when religious folks get upset about this, we say, "What? We're not even talking to you. We're talking to non-believers. Are you a non-believer? No, ignore our billboard." But of course they never do. And that's what's so great about this, because the egg is on their face. If you take a soft approach like this, instead of poking a stick in their eye, then when they get upset, they're railing against nothing that's about them. It's the Aikido approach. Well, anyway, so this billboard went up on May 1st, 2008, the National Day of Reason in Philadelphia. But we did something interesting here. We organized a coalition around that. That is, all the local groups in the Philadelphia area were organized to work together cooperatively, and the billboard brought traffic to one website that listed all of the groups on it and had links to the websites of each of the groups. It created one-stop shopping in the Philadelphia area for all of the groups in the movement. And it was very effective and grew a lot of the groups. Well, shortly after this billboard went up, and I was involved in this process, I got an irate email from an offended church lady with a church called the Lighthouse of Oxford Valley, pronounced love. And they said that, look, this billboard had already been up 2 weeks, just down the road a piece from the Philly Core billboard. And they said, "Your billboard is mocking our billboard, because look, they both have blue sky." So you see, it was really all about them. All right, well, we looked at this and we said, no. Really, we didn't even know about your billboard. Honestly, we just rented space, and there's where it was, and up it went. But it gave us a chance to have a conversation with that church. And once the conversation started, the manager for Philly Core had a talk with the minister of that church, and together they decided to work out a project. And so they went to Philabundance, which is in Philadelphia, for helping the homeless, packing up food packages for the homeless. And what was going on here was, you see, all of the people with that love church and all of our people got together. That's every other person there is wearing a t-shirt from one or the other of the groups. And that church and Philly Core put the same number of people together to do a charitable project. So first, Philly Core got all of this publicity in the local papers for their nasty, godless billboard. And then all of a sudden they got another round of publicity for being nice team players who were coexisting peacefully with churches and working together to do good deeds for the homeless. So you see, man bites dog. You know, these evil atheists doing good deeds? Wow, that's surprising, that's shocking, that's news, it's unheard of. All right, well, that's how you do it. Well, meanwhile, across the pond in Britain, they came up with this idea for a bus ad campaign. There's probably no God, now stop worrying and just enjoy your life. All right, so the British Humanist Association launched the atheist bus campaign, but they did it just by announcing that they were going to run these ads on the buses. And so they announced it in October 2008. And the mere announcement that they were going to do this brought so much money to them that they raised 120,402 pounds sterling, which is about $180,000 US, just to run their ads on buses. They were going to run them only on London buses. By the time they got all that money together, they ran them all over the United Kingdom. Okay, that's England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Just because of the excitement that this stirred up. Well, that put a fire under the American Humanist Association in Washington, D.C., and they immediately worked out their own slogan and a well-attended press conference. Why believe in a God? Just be good, for goodness sake. This was down around the winter holidays, and that press conference was November 11th, 2008, and the American Humanist Association began enjoying non-stop publicity for this campaign. And the deluge of media attention led to such a sudden high volume of traffic to the special website created for the campaign that it crashed twice. And media interview requests swarmed in. Soon, AHA Executive Director Roy Speckart was on Fox and Friends and CNN Headline News, while I went on the O'Reilly Factor and the Laura Ingraham Show. Well, and I had fun on Bill O'Reilly, and if you're curious, you can watch my O'Reilly appearance. Just type in, just Google Fred Edwards on Bill O'Reilly, and it'll pop right up, and you can watch it, and I think you'll like it. I do. Well, these appearances generated further reaction, and not only from the media. By the way, this sign was on the back of the bus driver's seat on the bus there, and so you can see you got the Santa there shrugging his shoulders because it's really a rhetorical question. We're not asking them to tell us why they believe in a God and send in their answers. We're just saying, well, I believe in a God. Just be good for goodness sake. So it's a rhetorical question. Local television stations interviewed people in the Washington, D.C. area to get their reaction to this. They couldn't find anybody who had a problem with our campaign. Even if they didn't take our position, they didn't have a problem with our campaign. But nonetheless, the religious right was beating the war on Christmas drum, and so all sorts of phone calls were coming in to the offices of the American Humanist Association, and you can tell by the accents of the callers where they were coming from, and they were coming from the South. All right. But, and in fact, one person sent a nasty email, and I love this one. It's my favorite angry email. It says, "Is there a God? Of course there is. Where do you think Adam and Eve came from?" As if to help keep the AHA's publicity alive, a local Catholic stay-at-home mother of 4 decided to launch a counter-campaign. Same type of advertisement, same number of buses, same topic. Her slogan, "Why believe? Because I created you and I love you, for goodness sake." And the sentiment, of course, is signed, God. The AHA reaction was positive, and why not? All this silliness kept their name in the news, and new memberships flowing in for a whole lot longer. You see, you love to get pushback on these campaigns, because every time someone does a counter campaign, they're reacting to us, right? So it always goes back to the original story. We get the publicity from their money. So it's great. And so I even went on a talk show opposite the woman who put this billboard up, and I suggested to her that her billboard slogan had been ghost written. About a month after the British ads first appeared, the United Coalition of Reason was created to export the Philly Corps revolution all over the country. Incorporated in February 2009, United Corps launched its first billboard campaign in late March in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. And later, in August 2009, we worked with a local group in Des Moines, Iowa. There was at that time only one group there. So we couldn't pay for their bus ads because we in the United Coalition of Reason only pay if it's building a coalition. Nonetheless, we handled their graphic design, we handled their publicity, we wrote the press release, we did everything. My rule is, if you're just an individual group, ask us for anything but money. Okay, so normally we would have paid for the ad if it were building a coalition. Anyway, they put this ad up on buses taking visitors to the Iowa State Fair. So the ads went up on the side of the buses, big publicity boom, lots of excitement. And then a wonderful thing happened. The bus company got complaints, and they took the ads down. That was a second round of publicity that we didn't even count on. And then I called up one of our lawyers. I said, we got to get on them. And they also talked to the ACLU, and the ACLU got on them. And then the ads went right back up. 3 rounds of publicity. You've got to love it. All right. Well, that was Iowa. I thought New York City media might prove too sophisticated to go for our subway ad campaign there. Well, how wrong I was. When the New York Times announced October 19th that Big Apple Corp was putting up ads inside select subway stations declaring 1 million New Yorkers are good without God, are you? The coverage went through the roof. I read about this story in the China Daily. Al Jazeera ran a video segment on it. Well, keeping up the rapid pace of ad media campaigns like this, United Corps managed to establish a network of 20 coalitions nationwide by the end of our first year, 2009, and the overwhelming majority of these campaigns went off without a hitch. Sometimes, however, we had to turn lemons into a lemonade, like this one. We learned to our surprise that our Northwest Arkansas ad was part of a double billboard shared with the Central United Methodist Church. Well, we played up the theme then of atheists living in peaceful coexistence with their religious neighbors. So we were able to play that. Then in late June 2010, the North Carolina Secular Association launched its One Nation, Indivisible campaign in 5 cities across the state. And the luck of this campaign was enhanced by the publicity efforts that went along with it, because in North Carolina, the billboard in Charlotte was put on the biggest highway in town, which just happens to be named Billy Graham Parkway. So, of course, the North Carolina Secular Association was blamed for picking on the retired evangelist. Then came the backlash. First, there was the graffiti offering an editorial correction. Gee, I didn't think there was anything missing in our slogan. But that was then followed by a counter billboard campaign. These always increased the publicity for our side, since all news coverage of the response campaign can't help but refer back to the original campaign. All right, meanwhile, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, as you've seen, had developed quite a collection of their own billboard designs, and later that summer they started blanketing select cities with large numbers of them, 20 in Louisville, Kentucky, and 50 in Atlanta, Georgia. Overall, the FFRF has placed billboards in more than half the states and about 50 cities, and all of these promote the national organization. Well, then came the winter holidays in 2010. Kicking off the jolly season was the Dallas-Fort Worth Coalition of Reason. Now, they'd already had their United Corps funded billboard launch back in March 2009. So this one was on their own initiative and on their own dime. But we helped them with publicity. Now, I wasn't fond of their graphic design. I thought it was too busy, and so that you can interpret that. That American flag background behind the slogan is made up of the faces of real atheists taken at the Texas Free Thought Convention. And so different people were proud of what row and line number that their face was in and so on. So it was a bunch of faces forming a busy-looking American flag behind the slogan, "Millions of Americans are good without God." I told them I thought it was almost unreadable. Not only that, they only had enough money to put the ad on one side of a mere 4 buses in just one city, Fort Worth, Texas. But with a little press release help from United Corps, that was all it took. Because once the ad was announced, just announced, even before it actually went up, a group of churches got together and said to the bus company, if you put this ad up on your buses, we're going to have a bus boycott by our churches. Well, somebody from the bus company came out and talked to the churches and said, look, we cannot engage in viewpoint discrimination against atheists. If we run religious ads on our buses, we have to run their ads too. That's the law because we are a government entity. We have no choice. Well, the ads did go on, and the bus boycott did happen. And the churches boycotted the buses and carpooled their people to work. And that created a big stir in the media, more than could have been asked for. A mere 4 buses, and they were so afraid they might actually ride on a bus, one of the 4 buses out of the whole fleet of like 90-some buses. They were worried, oh no, I might get on one of those atheist buses. And so they avoided the buses. But that wasn't enough. Another religious organization hired a billboard truck to follow one of the buses around throughout its route, offering a counter-opposing message. Because, of course, no one's ever heard about the Christian response to atheism before, and they wanted to make sure that everyone got the point. All right, well, all of this just stirred up more excitement, and then a third group ran their own ads on Fort Worth buses. So all of this brouhaha generated so much publicity that the groups in the Dallas-Fort Worth Coalition of Reason gained hundreds of new members. And then the city council voted a month later, a month after this started. So this campaign, which normally, our campaigns usually are in the news for about a week or two. This campaign, because of all of the brouhaha it stirred up, went on for a month and a half. And the city council met, and finally they voted to remove all religious ads from all the buses in Fort Worth, Texas, so this could never happen again. Well, next on the scene was American Atheists. They put up this billboard at one end of the Lincoln Tunnel in New York City around the holiday season. You know it's a myth. This season, celebrate reason. So here was a much stronger in-your-face message. In reaction, it led Bill Donahue of the Catholic League to place an opposing billboard at the other end of the Lincoln Tunnel, giving American Atheists even more publicity. It was overwhelmingly. It made David Silverman a household name. It put him on the Colbert Report and so forth. Then the controversy became so well known, in fact, that for a time it was even possible to parody the American Atheist slogan in an editorial cartoon about something else. Republicans stand for fiscal responsibility. You know it's a myth. And there's a guy from the Tea Party playing the billboard. Well, the following year, United Corps tried to launch the Central Arkansas Coalition of Reason in Little Rock, Arkansas. And we wanted to time our ad campaign during their May 2011 Riverfest celebration. We wanted to get the buses taking all of the tourists to Riverfest. It's really important to get tourist business, not because we're trying to convert tourists, but because we're trying to shock the people in the city. Oh no, what are they going to think of us? All these people visiting our fair city and finding out we're a bunch of atheists here in Little Rock, Arkansas. So you see, that's what stirs it up. So you pick times when visitors will be coming to town so that people get duly embarrassed, because we want them to realize, you know what? The sky isn't going to fall just because there are atheists in town, okay? Get used to us. All right, so we were going to put these ads on the buses. And we had it all arranged, but then the bus company started throwing roadblocks on our path, and finally, they refused us outright. So on June 1st, 2011, we filed suit in federal court charging viewpoint discrimination by a government agency. This was, of course, accompanied by a press release. And our local coalition of Reason got a lot of coverage, a ton of coverage. So in other words, we didn't have to pay to run these bus ads. We got free publicity by suing the bastards. All right? Then on August 11, 2011, which was Robert Ingersoll's birthday, we secured a preliminary injunction to force the Transit Authority and its advertising agent to run our ads. And the news coverage for this was overwhelming. Well, finally, these ads did go up, appearing on Little Rock buses October 2nd and announced with a third press release, and they continued to run through the time of the Arkansas State Fair. So we got all of that publicity. And not only that, but we got our legal fees paid because we won the case. Well, when the buses were about to roll out, a local kickball team of the atheists there in town, called the Non-Profits, dressed up in these bus costumes, and Fox News, the local Fox News, covered this story, and this gave us a teachable moment to talk about this. So, well, now, that lawsuit was successful. So, we figured, okay, now we've got everybody running scared of us. Well, not really, because we decided in Pittsburgh we were going to run this ad on the Pittsburgh buses. Don't believe in God, you are not alone, our standard ad from the Pittsburgh Coalition of Reason. And it looked like they were going to accept our ad, and in fact, they even had a caveat. They said, well, now, I want you to look at the small print down at the bottom. Well, you can hardly read that there, so I'll make it a little larger. It says, let's see, how much of that can you read? Let's see. The views and or opinions expressed by the advertiser are not necessarily those of the Port Authority. All right, and I know I've got about, what, 10 more minutes for like questions and so forth? No, I'm at the very end. All right, well then what I just want to tell you then is the United Coalition of Reason organizes coalitions to do exciting things, to get groups working together. And so what I want you folks to realize is that we want to train a cadre of local leaders to be able to be effective in organizing local groups. And so the seminar I'm giving tomorrow afternoon, at the very end of the conference, the 2-hour seminar, is going to train you in how to do these kinds of things, do effective press releases that get attention, to get you on TV and radio without you making a fool of yourself. All of that sort of thing. I will teach you how. I'm here to train you. I came all of this way because I want to give you a chance to learn the how-tos of professional and effective public relations. Oh, wait, I can quick tell them what happened in the I'm sorry. Yes, he told me my time was up. I didn't get to the end of the story. All right, so we finally got the Pittsburgh Port Authority to agree that their rules were a little bit problematic. We got them to improve their rules, but they still shut us up. So we're not going to be able to advertise on Pittsburgh buses. But we did do a court settlement, and they paid us $60,000. And part of that money is so that we can take our advertising elsewhere. So we're going to run a billboard campaign right here in Pittsburgh.